Welcome to this presentation on how to apply for ethical clearance. Thank you for taking the time to review this video to improve your knowledge of the ethical clearance process. Any research involving human subjects must be approved by the Ethics Committee. Most applications require revisions, thus it is recommended that you build this into your project timeline. When responding to revisions, the applicant must provide a cover letter outlining where the specific changes were made to the document. The next discussion will guide you through the application form. The Personal Details section. Ensure that you complete this section completely and accurately. Please do not provide your full research proposal here. What is required is a short project description of not more than 2 pages that gives, under the following headings, a brief overview spelling out the background to the study, the key questions to be addressed, the participants, or subjects, and research site. Include a full description of the sample, and the research approach/methods. Project title. Ensure the title is clear and concise. Location of the study, where will the study be conducted? You must obtain permission from the gatekeepers of the location. For example, you will need permission from the Department of Education prior to conducting research in schools. Objectives of a need for the study. Set out the major objectives and the theoretical approach of the research, indicating briefly why you believe the study is needed. The objectives are steps that you are going to take to answer your research questions. Briefly describe your theoretical approach, which is the underlying basis for your study and the lens through which you are using to examine your topic. Briefly discuss the problem statement and the significance of your study. Questions to be answered in the research. The questions and aims must relate directly to the objectives. In order to receive ethical approval, a proposed study must be able to answer the research question and address the stated objectives. Conflict of interest. Clearly acknowledge any conflict of interest, as this may result in a bias. Indicate how you will maintain objectivity. The research approach/methods. This section should explain how you will go about answering the critical questions which you have identified previously. Set out the approach within which you will work, and indicate in step-by-step point form the methods you will use in this research in order to answer the critical questions. Please do not provide your full research proposal here. You need to briefly discuss the following under subheadings. Specify the research approach. Examples include experimental, quasi-experimental, correlational, causal comparative, quantitative, qualitative, mixed methods. Briefly justify your choice, no definitions are required. Spell out the independent and dependent variables. Describe the setting and the sample method. Include the size of the sample. Justify your sampling method. State clearly the inclusion, exclusion criteria. Specify the instruments used and their derivation. Describe the data collection procedure. Indicate how the data will be analyzed. Indicate how you would ensure validity and reliability of your study design. Ethical considerations. The study should present minimal risk to participants. Issues such as respect for persons/autonomy, beneficence and non-maleficence, justice and confidentiality will need to be considered. Do not provide references, merely describe your study design. The research design must clearly align with the research question. Concisely describe any procedures in detail, including all phases. If a study has multiple phases, highlight exactly what participants will be doing at each stage. Indicate if the phases are concurrent or sequential. Appendices containing information referred to in this section are required, for example your questionnaire. In the proposed work plan section, you need to clearly identify the steps in your study and allocate reasonable time frames to each step. A study with unreasonable time frames will not be acceptable. Be advised that the Ethics Committee cannot approve retrospective research, that is research applications where dates for project initiation are before the committee meets to discuss the application. Note: applicants must allow for sufficient amount of time to gather data and complete the research. Section 3, Ethical Issues and Risk Assessments. The following two subsections deal with vulnerable groups and invasive research practices. Consider each of the following vulnerable groups carefully. If you answer yes to any of the previously mentioned, explain, attach as an appendix, and justify. Explain, 2, what steps you will take to minimize the potential stress, harm. Note it is not ethical to exclude a group because of their vulnerability, as they may benefit from the study as well. However, additional steps will need to be taken to minimize harm. Always weigh the benefit versus harm. If you answer yes to any of these questions, your research may use a more invasive research methodology or represent more complex ethical or privacy issues, in which case you need to explain, attach as an appendix, the ethical implications and procedures to minimize harm to the participants or UNISA. This type of study will be categorized as either 3 or 4. If you are unsure about any of these concepts, please consult your supervisor/project leader. Your study may be referred to the University Ethics Committee. Under the Instruments Used subsection, ensure that you attach a copy of the research instrument where applicable. Ensure that you clearly mark the instrument with an appendix. Consider each question provided carefully. If you indicate a no, this needs to be explained and justified. Attach as an appendix also the measures to be adopted to ensure that the respondents fully understand the nature of the research and the consent that they are giving. You will need to design a consent form for your participants. You need to ensure that each element provided here is managed in your consent form. There are sample consent forms available for downloading from MyUnisa. Note you may need different consent forms for different groups. In some instances, a permission letter is needed from other institutions to, for example, recruitment, use premises or use data. This section is designed to highlight potential ethical issues that may arise in research involving human subjects. Applicants are expected to carefully consider these ethical issues and prepare a clear rationale for any risks involved in research participation and present a cohesive strategy to safeguard participants. Consider whether you dealing with vulnerable groups or if your research method may result in any harm to the participants. Please note that the research data should be kept for a period of at least 5 years in a secure environmental safe location by arrangement with your supervisor. Indicate how you store the data and how you destroy the data. You may indicate that you will use pseudonyms and the real names of participants will not be revealed in any research findings. Discuss any conditions, particularly in reference to ethical considerations that any funding or participating organization has placed on your research. Discuss the nature of your funding and the impact of the funding on the research. Take into account the ethical considerations. Formalization of the process. Ensure that you complete the ethical clearance checklist for the ethical applications. Submit both the checklist and the application form to your supervisor for review. No applications will be considered without your supervisor's signature and approval on both the checklist and the application. Submit your signed checklist and application and your proposal to the chair of the Ethics Committee. This presentation was designed to highlight potential ethical issues that may arise in research involving human subjects. Once approval is received, all research must be carried out as indicated in the original application. If any changes are made to the research design, then an addendum must be submitted to the chair, together with the original application.